Hi, I'm Davy. I'm awesome. Welcome to Davy's Awesome Movies, where I review the styles of movies that I love, the alternative, B-rated, cult-style flicks. This week it's one that's, definitely alternative. Definitely got a cult following. Most people loving it because it's so stupid. This movie came out in the year 2000, and it was directed by Brian Robbins, and written by Stephen Brill, produced by Bobby Newmeyer and Jeffrey Silver, made by Bel Air Entertainment, Outlaw Productions, and Tolan Robbins Productions, and distributed by Warner Brothers. Ladies and gentlemen, the 2000 film that got David Arquette the World Championship. Ready to rumble. The movie opens at a convenience store with a couple of wrestling fans, Gordy and Sean. Sean played by Scott Conn, Gordy played by former WCW champion David Arquette. And they are talking about their favorite wrestler, Jimmy King, who's not a real wrestler and is not even played by a wrestler. He's played by Oliver Platt.
And he holds the record for the longest winning streak in the history of professional wrestling.
Yeah, but this is WCW, where their win streaks are a little sus. Just saying. Goldberg's win streak, it would be like at 100 on Monday, and then by Thursday somehow it's 116. So he had 16 matches in 4 days. This is broken up by the store clerk, who is played by Ahmet Zappa, and he is telling them to leave because wrestling sucks. Because for some reason, non-wrestling fans can't accept that there are actually wrestling fans. Even though wrestling fans, we're not asking you to like it, we're just kind of asking you to leave us alone and let us like it. And this leads to Gordy fantasizing about wrestling Ahmet Zappa in a convenience store match. Because what wrestling fan hasn't imagined wrestling around a bunch of Funyuns and Suzy Q's? This part of the movie is actually pointless, does nothing for the plot. Then again, that's pretty much the entire movie. After Gordy's wrestling fantasy, he is confronted by his father, who is a police officer, who also does not like wrestling.
Wrestling's not fake!
Okay, I will say this part is very accurate of being a wrestling fan. And you want to scream that at people. Me, example, I relate to this a little bit too much, because I not only wanted to scream it at people, I wanted to scream it at my dad, who, like Gordy's dad, would not shut up with, "Don't you know wrestling is fake?" It is not fake, it is staged. There's a difference. Yes, they know who's going to win. It's predetermined. It's a show. Kind of like the movie you're watching or any other show you watch. Or did you think Friends was really following a group of people who hardly ever go to work and just sit on a coffeehouse couch all day? It's a show. But saying it's fake, John Cena did not fake break his neck. Triple H did not fake tear a quad while he was doing a clothesline. And Edge did not fake tear his Achilles tendon. The next day, Sean and Gordy go off to their jobs, which is driving a truck around that empties septic tanks and empties and cleans porta potties. So you could say that their job is crap. And after they're finished cleaning the porta potties, Sean needs to use one, which is really the only time I would ever be comfortable using one is after it's been deep cleaned. But he also knows that Gordy is planning something.
If you do it, Jimmy King will get hurt tonight. Don't do it.
But Gordy is his best friend. So of course he does it. Because as a guy friends, we suck. Yes, I would do this to my best friend. Yes, he would do it to me. Then they decide to go get lunch and eat it off the back of their truck that is leaking butt juice. And no matter how many times I've seen this part, it grosses me out. And if I have to be grossed out, so do you. Then we go to WCW Monday Nitro, where the president of WCW, Titus Sinclair, which was not the real president of WCW ever, just a made-up character played by Joe Pantoliano, is pulling aside DDP, Diamond Dallas Page, an actual WCW wrestler at this time, former WCW champion. And he's pulling Diamond Dallas Page aside because he is tired of their champion Jimmy King's prima donna crap. For example, he's late to that show.
Tonight's your night.
After this, we fast forward a bit. Jimmy King has finally showed up, and they can have their match.
Yeah, baby!
That championship was not the actual WCW championship that they used. That was one they made for the movie, where that one is mostly nickel-plated with a tiny bit of gold on it. The actual WCW championship was mostly gold-plated with a little bit of nickel. Titus Sinclair comes out to the ring to admonish Jimmy King for being late.
Go count your money, you midget.
So now the match starts, and it's going pretty standard until
Boss's orders, fat boy.
things get real. Really real, like not even staged. And a bunch more wrestlers come out to help against Jimmy King.
That's what you get when you suck your buddy down the toilet. You jinxed him.
Yeah, he warned you. So now,
2, 3.
Diamond Dallas Page is the new champion. And at that point, Titus Sinclair gets on the mic and announces that Jimmy King is fired and will never wrestle for WCW again. Good. Go to WWF. If you were really that big a star in WCW, they would take you, give you a new persona, and heck, they'd still be around in a year. Gordy and Sean, after the show, they handled this pretty well. And thanks to that wheel jerk, they crashed the Turdmobile. By the way, some wrestling fans get irritated at this part because it makes us look like we don't understand the reality of the situation. We don't usually get this upset when our favorite wrestler loses. Like, it might upset us a little bit, we might get mad, but we're not sitting there crying our eyes out. Although I'm sure there are some that do. Then again, don't judge us, because there's famous videos of that same thing happening when somebody's team loses a football or baseball game. After everything is cleaned up and Gordy and Sean's truck is towed away, they decide to hitchhike to Atlanta and help Jimmy King. Stupid on so many levels. You don't know him. What the heck would you do anyway? And hitchhiking is dangerous. And it takes them a while to even get somebody to give them a ride, but eventually they do. Well, at least you got a ride with a bunch of people who aren't going to molest you and kill you and leave you off the side of the road. Might turn out the other way if it was priests instead of nuns, though. Once they get to Atlanta, they meet a kid named Isaac, played by Chris Owens. And he is not only playing a wrestling video game, but it turns out he is a Jimmy King superfan just like them. He even offers to help them find Jimmy King. By the way, this kind of crosses the line of fandom into stalker, just so you know.
Sir Isaac, you have served your king well.
See, this is the thing. It portrays them as wrestling fans, but they're not wrestling fans. They're morons. They go to Jimmy King's home, but he's not there. Only people there is his son and his wife, Eugenia, whom he ran out on.
All I got to remember him by is an itchy crotch.
Eugenia is played by Caroline Ray, who you would figure after 2 years of not having her husband around would have went to the doctor and gotten that taken care of.
Duh.
Then they go meet his son.
My mama says he's got to pay for my braces, otherwise they're going to repossess him.
So it turns out that Jimmy King is not a hero, but rather a frickin' white trash dude who ran on his wife and kids. This is why you don't meet your heroes. So next they go to Jimmy King's parents. Mr. King being played by Louis Arquette, David Arquette's father. And Jimmy King's parents tell them that, Jimmy King just wasn't really bright. Didn't do very well in school, even left in the 10th grade. But Sean argues that that's not true. He read Jimmy King's biography.
And after you died in a plane crash, he went to community college.
Idiot.
I ought to kick your ass, freak.
Yeah, you oughta. They find out Jimmy King borrowed his parents' motorhome, which makes them able to find him at a mobile home park. But he's, incognito.
King! Peso!
Your disguise would work a little bit better if you'd shave. Just saying.
Duh.
They give Jimmy King $30 for a 5-minute meet and greet, and then get themselves more time by offering to do a beer run, but first they want a Jimmy King line. Like, he has classic lines like, "Big on," or "I will rule you." But Jimmy King's got another line for them.
Go get my damn beer, you friggin' morons!
Good enough.
Beers!
After they go get him his beer, they start trying to convince him that he needs to get back in the ring because he's the best!
You know it's just a show, right?
Clearly they don't. But they do harass him enough to get him back into the spirit. Okay, as a wrestling fan, I gotta address this. Yes, we would love it if our favorite wrestler did his finishing move on us. As not only a wrestling fan, but a movie fan, I would love it if Alpha Platt hit me. So the next day, they head to Nitro.
Also here tonight in a hardcore match,
In 2000? Yeah, right. You guys were giving out free tickets so your arenas wouldn't look too empty on television. And in true Gordy and Shawn fashion, they sneak Jimmy King in with a porta potty. Even though, again, you could have just went and got some free tickets. I'm sure they didn't want it to look too dead in there. But as they're walking around, they see the Nitro Girls, which was, yes, a thing in WCW. They had cheerleaders. They see their dressing room.
Can I help you with anything?
That is Sasha, played by Rose McGowan. Gordy, trying to come up with something, blurts out that he was checking out her breasts.
Large.
Well, thanks.
Smooth. Now, during a live interview, King rushes out of the porta potty and starts beating the crap out of Titus Sinclair and DDP with a toilet seat. And of course they didn't see it coming. They were just like, oh crap.
1, 2, 3. The winner by pinfall.
Yeah, that's not how it works. But Sinclair is so enraged that he makes an offer to Jimmy King for in 1 week at their Royal Bash at the MGM in Las Vegas, that if he can win a steel cage match against Diamond Dallas Page, or at least survive it, he will get the belt and $1 million. But if not, he has to retire and never wrestle anywhere ever again. And Gordy and Shawn accept this on behalf of Jimmy King. Then they go and have a little soiree for the King. And Sasha shows up and somehow her and Gordy are hitting it off. Somehow. What? Jimmy King is, of course, very afraid of this because this is going to be a real fight. So the next morning they take Jimmy King to a special trainer.
Sal Mandini. Wanna wrestle?
Played by the late ever-so-great Martin Landau. Rest in peace. And his character is based on Lou Thez and Stu Hart. In my opinion, more Stu Hart than Lou Thez. Sal Mandini agrees to train him.
Wrong old man to be messing with. Tap out.
This is why I say more Stu Hart than Lou Thez, because there are lots of stories about Stu Hart that even as an old man in his 60s and 70s was taking young, big, huge, built wrestlers down into his basement with a wrestling ring that they nicknamed Stu Hart's Dungeon, where he was basically hooking them and stretching them. And, well, there's lots of stories from lots of different wrestlers about how everywhere in this big, huge house, which it had to be big because Stu Hart had 12 kids, you could hear the screams of these wrestlers. In fact, it was also said that the one way to get Stu to stop was stop screaming, because the more you screamed, the more he hurt you. Now Gordy and Sasha have a date. Huh?
Buenos nachos, señorita.
Yeah?
Got something for you.
He got her some bananas because the flower shop was closed. He's a virgin. Things go well. Somehow. And Sasha tells Gordy that she wants to see some of his moves.
That was a snapmare.
I'll tell you this much, as bad as I was with the ladies, this movie always made me feel better about myself.
I meant, why don't we wrestle in here?
Kinda weird, since in your last movie together, you guys played brother and sister. She then unveils her secret weapons!
Foreign objects!
Despite that, he loses his V-card. So I guess there's still hope for some of you out there. The next day, they need people in King's Corner, so they go to recruit. They start with Goldberg. But Goldberg is still angry at Jimmy King for a match where he showed up late and drunk and then puked on him in the middle of the ring.
I was your partner.
I'd still be angry too. It gets back to Sinclair that Sal Mandini is training him, so he sends Sid Vicious and Perry Saturn after him. But this doesn't go very easy for the two of them. And honestly, this is my favorite scene because it leads to my favorite line in the movie, one of my favorite lines in the history of cinema.
Where's your daddy, bitch?
Oh. Yes! Yes! Martin Landau was awesome. Sid is not. Of course, Sal Mandini ends up in the hospital, very badly beaten, and Gordy, Shawn, King, and Sasha go to the hospital, and Sasha goes in the other room to make a phone call.
Titus, I'm wasting my time at the hospital.
Okay, she's working for Titus. Finally, my faith in humanity is restored, because I'll tell you, the first time I saw this, I wanted to kill myself knowing this girl was with him. Her only issue with what happened is that they beat down Sal so bad.
Tell that to Saturn and Sid Vicious over here. Morons.
Bitch!
But over to Sal, He's talking about he's going to be in the hospital for a while. He's got a neck brace on. He's on oxygen. He feels like he's been through a car accident.
I feel like a kid again.
Well, good for you. Then Sal has a nice little talk with Jimmy King, telling him how he knows he has demons, but instead of running from them, he needs to face them head on.
Because that, my friend, is living.
So now they decide to get in the motorhome and head back to Wyoming so they can get back to basics. But Gordy tells Sasha she can't come. Honestly, looking at you and knowing the way you are, take what you can get, dude. As they're heading to Wyoming, though, King needs to make a stop at Eugenia's.
Ow!
And get kicked in his cherries.
Oh, I just had to kick you in the diddly again.
What a ball buster. After he puts some ice on it, he promises her that he is going to go to Las Vegas, win back his belt, win $1 million, pay off his debts, and come back and do right by her.
By God, I'm gonna get that boy a damn good dentist.
So now they get to Sean and Gordy's home in Wyoming, and as soon as they get there,
Just get in the car.
yeah, Gordy's dad is going to force him to be a cop. Which I will say, somebody who is forced to be a cop, that sounds like that's going to be a great cop. Then again, you know your son. Do you really want him to be a cop? So Sean and King have to assemble their posse by themselves. Sean gets a couple of guys and a girl.
My friends, they call me Pretty Kitty.
But naturally, Jimmy has some concerns.
What you gonna do? Boog him to death?
Now to the event, WCW Royal Bash at the MGM in Las Vegas. Which Royal Bash was never a thing they had, and when you look at that audience, you can clearly see that that is not the MGM. It's way too damn small. In the back, we see Sinclair talking to Sting, telling him that he better make sure that King does not win the match. But you don't tell Sting what to do. Then they unveil the triple cage. A cage on top of another cage on top of another cage, where the goal is to get to the final cage where the belt is hanging up and retrieve the belt. This match was a concept that was created for this movie, and then WCW decided to try to do it in their actual wrestling shows. They did it twice. They were garbage. Now the match is underway, and immediately two guys start attacking Jimmy King, helping Diamond Dallas Page. One of them is Juventud Guerrera. The other is a mystery.
Don't do it, Dad. Why did he stop?
I'd do it. Just saying, hitting you in the face with a ladder, that might straighten out those teeth a bit. But of course, Jimmy just asks, what are you doing here?
Paying you back.
Yeah! Kids. But then, Goldberg, Booker T, Billy Kidman, and Disco Inferno come out to help King. Although I will say you should have left Disco Inferno. He's not going to be much help. Problem is, though, they locked the cage. They can't get in. So, Gordy shows up to help. Well, now it's a little bit more even. And it turns out Gordy's dad is watching.
Harpoon his ass!
That's actually called a spear, not a harpoon. I figured the movie you could at least learn the names of the frickin' moves. Then again, I used to see that a lot in television. I remember watching one thing where they had Mankind on a TV show and they were like, look, figure four, and the guy's got him in like a neck hold. Figure four is done to your legs. Or even worse, I remember seeing like somebody like doing like a kick type thing and them going, oh, pile driver. Pile driver is when you put their head in between the legs, lift them up, and drop them on their head. Learn the names of the moves! In the midst of this, Sasha shows up in the cage to tell Gordy that she wants to get back together.
Shut up, Sean.
Sasha, you should.
In your face! DDP is at the top cage, and he was able to throw King down. He's about to get the belt, but then it's Sting! Of course I was going to do that. Sting gets down, and Sean is excited. He wants a hug.
Me too, man. Hit me, my turn!
I would love it if Sting hit me in the face. Now both King and Page get back to the top cage. I'm guessing that would probably kill somebody. Then again, I guessed that falling off the top of the Hell in the Cell would have killed somebody, and well, Mick Foley's still here. So naturally, King is able to get the belt. he's got the $1 million. Evil is punished. Post-match, he's doing an interview where he announces he's going to go after the tag team titles with his new tag team partner, Gordy Boggs, who he's nicknaming The Law.
I will bust you!
And Sean is going to be his manager.
Sean Sugar Daddy Dawkins.
So your little stable here is the King, the Law, and the Sugar Daddy. Well, that fits together. But hey, King has got the $1 million, the belt. Titus Sinclair is foiled. Gordy and Sean are not only wrestling fans, but they're in the wrestling business. Everyone is living the dream.
God bless America.
So there you have it. That's a 2000 wrestling movie, Ready to Rumble. The movie WCW funded, thinking it was going to save them. It didn't. A year later, they would be out of business. And this movie definitely didn't help, as it tanked. It had a $24 million budget, decent budget for a movie like this, but only did $12.5 million in the box office. So, ouch. Not to mention, it actually turned a lot of people off to wrestling. Because really the only people who were going to want to see this movie were going to be wrestling fans, like me. And most wrestling fans were offended by it. They took it to believe that this is what wrestling fans are like. These bumbling idiots who can't discern reality from fiction. I didn't take it that way. I didn't take it as they were insulting wrestling fans. I took it as they were insulting WCW fans. But obviously, I will say this. Even back when I first saw it, I loved it. Me and my group of friends loved it. We watched it together several times. But we loved it, accepting that this isn't good. None of us thought it was good. We just thought it was entertaining. Interesting casting choices, though. They got Martin Landau to play Sal Mandini, which was awesome. Pretty much everybody who likes this movie, that's their favorite character. Originally, they wanted Jack Palance to play him. I'm glad I went to Martin Landau. Because I'm sorry, as great as it would have been for Jack Palance, there's just something about Martin Landau saying, "Who's your daddy, bitch?" In this movie, Scott Conn did his own stunts, but for David Arquette, it was actually Hurricane Helms who did his stunts for him. And for Oliver Platt, Chris Kanyon did his stunts for him. Because who better than Kanyon? Probably explains how Kanyon got to keep the belt. Titus Sinclair was based off of former WCW Vice President Eric Bischoff, and Eric Bischoff was actually supposed to play the character, which was going to be a fictionalized version of himself. But before this went into production, Eric Bischoff had been fired by WCW, so they got Joe Pantoliano to play the character. The thing about this movie is not only was it not very well received, but to try to help build up both the movie and wrestling, they decided to do cross-promoting in WCW, which naturally, WWE, for several of the movies that they made, they did cross-promoting. Heck, they did that for the movie Real Steel. Hugh Jackman came in and guest hosted. But they didn't go as far as WCW did. WCW decided to take it a step further by actually making David Arquette the WCW World Champion. They had a tag team match where the title would be on the line, and David Arquette was the one who got the pin. At the very next show, he lost it, but it did not turn out the way they wanted it to. Vince Russo still defends it by saying, well, we were in the New York Times the next day, but it's proof that not all publicity is good publicity. Because yes, people saw the papers, tuned in to see, is this real? Are you serious? But a lot of wrestling fans started turning the channel because that's what made them feel insulted. Me being one of those. Because you basically made the title of no effect by giving it to a non-wrestler. Years and years later, David Arquette, who was a lifelong wrestling fan, would actually go on a tour of wrestling, being an actual wrestler, getting actually trained, and having some pretty good matches. Not gonna lie. It's all documented in the documentary You Can't Kill David Arquette. But to give him the WCW title was just a bad move. And in fact, he didn't even want to do it at first. When they presented him the idea, he said no. He said, I don't think that would go over well, and people would think I was insulting the WCW lineage. But they convinced him to do it. And I'll give him that. As a lifelong wrestling fan, they offered him a chance to be WCW champion. A lot of fans got mad at him for that, but I do look at other fans and say, like, you would say no. If the head of creative at WCW would have asked you to mow their lawn, you wouldn't have said no. But the fact that he did try to say no shows that he did care. But it still didn't work out that way, and it was just one of the worst things WCW ever did, to this day. Which is funny considering, again, they'd be out of business a year later. Which, again, is funny that they did this, all this, to try to promote WCW, get them back on top like they had been for 83 weeks, as Eric Bischoff loves to go on and on about. but it actually did more damage than it did help. Despite the fact that it didn't do very well, there was a planned sequel, but that did not come to fruition because, like I said, a little over a year after this came out, WCW closed its doors for good and was bought out by WWE. And they didn't want to do a movie that would insult their fans. Then again, they did make the movie Jingle All the Way too. Like I said, if you can take it for what it is, a goofy, silly movie about a couple of idiots who can't discern reality from fiction, then it's entertaining. Not good, just entertaining. So on that note, if you're somebody who can take it for what it is, then yeah, I recommend check out Ready to Rumble. I mean, heck, you liked it, didn't you?
I didn't like it. It was long, boring, and not enough boobs.
The last time you were wearing that eye patch, wasn't it on the other side?
I have an eye patch?
So there you have it. That's my movie review this week. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you did, make sure to hit like, hit subscribe, hit the little bell so you get notifications when I post new videos, and leave a comment so I can respond to in my next comment corner. Tell me what you thought of Ready to Rumble. Love you guys.